If you're having any difficulty hearing, please check your speakers in the lower right side of your screen on your computer. And please, if you'd be so kind, could you please leave your microphones off and they're in a mute mode so we're not hearing any outside noise. So I'd like to start by introducing our divisional commander of the Prairie Division, Major Les Marshall, who would like to say hello and welcome.
Thank you so much, David, and hello everyone. My wife and I have just actually moved back to the Prairie Division after serving the last 7 years in Toronto at our national office and also in Vancouver. And we are thrilled to be back home, where we're looking forward to lead and serve this region for years to come. It's my privilege today to be able to welcome you here to today's Zoom call. I am so grateful for the technology that affords us this opportunity to connect in this way, where we can provide you with a snapshot of what the Salvation Army is doing and how we're trying to bring hope during the pandemic. Of course, without your ongoing support, we couldn't do what we do every day. And this isn't just something to say, rather it's really our reality. It's genuine and sincere. We really do thank you. Since 1886, the Salvation Army has been coming alongside people in our community, our neighbors, our colleagues, friends, families, seniors, impoverished, men, women, children, brothers and sisters, serving all people without discrimination in Manitoba and Northwest Ontario. From the outset of the pandemic, like everyone else, the Salvation Army has had to find new ways to provide practical support. These changes has forced us to make decisions, some decisions that we may never have made, and some of which are helping us be more effective than we ever have been before. While it's natural for each one of us to rush back to normal, I want our organization to choose better than normal. I want us to be more effective than ever before. I'm very proud of our team. I'm very proud of how we have shifted to provide more, even more transformational, life-changing programs, one person, one life at a time. I'm very proud of how we are giving hope today. As the largest non-governmental direct provider of social services in Canada, the Salvation Army offers unprecedented support to our society's most vulnerable. So when you give to the Salvation Army, you are giving hope today by investing in the future of marginalized and overlooked people. You really do make a difference. And on behalf of the Salvation Army, I personally say thank you.
Thank you, Major, and we appreciate your leadership. And now, without delay, we will give each presenter the opportunity to speak for 10 minutes on the impact of COVID-19 in their regions. What were they experiencing when COVID-19 started, and what is happening now? How the needs in their communities have changed, and a testimonial or a story of a client. Again, we'll put forward your questions to our speakers. Please submit them in the chat box below to Roberta Pronto. If we do not get to your questions today, we will follow up with you and provide you with an answer after the call. So without further ado, I'd like to start off with Executive Director Major Gordon Taylor and Addictions Counselor Anna Opa from the Winnipeg Center of Hope.
Well, good morning. It's great to be with you today to have this opportunity to share a bit of our story. The Center of Hope is a large place. I'm in my office here right now, but this doesn't really show you what happens in the building. It's 2 buildings and 5 different programs and a variety of things going on, including shelter for adults and for families and other programs. Anna's going to talk a little bit more specifically about one of our programs. When COVID hit, when it arrived in Manitoba in March, we were up to that point kind of business as usual, but immediately had to adjust some things. One of the big physical changes in the building was the distancing of our beds in order to allow people that space between themselves for sleeping, which of course meant less beds, reduced capacity. The other immediate challenge was that it was still winter in Winnipeg when this pandemic hit. And with reduced beds, not only for ourselves, but all of the shelters in town, it meant an immediate challenge. Where can people go to get in out of the cold? We did have some empty space in one of our buildings, the smaller of our 2 buildings here on Martha Street, and we were able to, in conjunction with another agency, open a temporary winter shelter to help fill some of those needs for a few weeks. And also in conjunction with other departments in the Salvation Army, you'll hear more about it later, we opened our Weedema Center over on Logan, a few blocks from here, as an overnight warming center. Reduced capacity, although also had a very negative impact on the overall operation in that most of our income is on a per diem, per use for the beds that we have. And so less beds meant less income from our government contracts. So that was a challenge we've been facing all along. Some of the changes we made within the building to address the needs presented by a pandemic were extra sanitization, less turnover in clientele. We tried to encourage people to just stay, kind of weather the storm with us. We suspended all of our group activities and programs. We put an overnight curfew on the building. On the positive side, we saw this incredible spirit of cooperation amongst the agencies dealing with challenges in looking after the homeless during this time. A great sense of cooperation that is continuing through, and I think will be an asset going forward. This was all back in March. In April, we quickly had run into the problem that if someone did go for testing for COVID and were told to self-isolate, that's a difficult thing to do if you're staying in a shelter or any group accommodation type setting. In conjunction with some other agencies, we're able to propose a solution, and a center was open, run by Main Street Project, to help people isolate from the homeless community if they went for testing. Our contribution for that was to provide the transportation. We have a vehicle that was given to us earlier this year by the province, a retired ambulance. We put that on the road, and 7 days a week from April through the end of June, we provided all of the transportation for people from this community going for testing, isolation, back to shelter. And that was a great opportunity to be able to serve in that way. We also implemented some other measures within the building, interview screens for speaking with our clientele, the use of PPEs for our staff, although there were a lot of supply issues early on for that, but we've got to a better spot now. We did actually close our cafeteria, but we still fed the people living here. We just did it as takeout meals that they would eat back at their rooms. We held regular update meetings with our management team on a daily basis at first, following them up with a memo to all of our staff, keep them in the loop on what was going on as things were changing every day. And I think that was a real comfort level thing for the staff, just to be updated and know what's happening. And we've continued to do that. The Free Press and the Sun provided free newspapers for our clientele, just to give them something to do during the day, and that was much appreciated. Into May and June, we ran into some new measures. Winter was over, but now we were running into hot weather problems. With the distancing in our building, we had lost our, what we call our day room, our space for people to drop in during the day. So again, that need was filled by our Weedema location around the corner, and they continue to operate a day shelter up to this point. We're also impacted very greatly by more lost income when the CERB funding came out. A lot of our clientele applied for it and moved out of our building into hotels. Of course, being paid on a per diem basis, we lost income there. But the province did step in with some emergency assistance for us towards the end of June that has helped make up for some of the lost income, although we're still in that situation today with less income than normal. Throughout the summer months, July and August, we've started reopening some of our group programs, our chapel services, group activities for those in our addictions treatment program. Anna's going to talk more about that in just a moment. The other thing we've seen that's a big challenge and a big concern is the escalating violence in the neighborhood. A lot of that caused by the border closures and people experimenting with different drugs than they normally would use and not knowing how that will affect their behavior. And we've seen a lot worse results because of that over this summer compared to previous summers. So there's lots of ongoing challenges, but we continue to move forward, and with God's help and your help, we'll continue to do that and meet those challenges as they come. Anna's going to tell you a little bit more now about our Anchorage Addictions Treatment Program and kind of some experiences there during this time. Go ahead, Anna.
Hi, I'm Anna. I am an addictions counselor at the Anchorage Addictions and Rehabilitation Program. So the Encourage program is a 30 or a 90-day program where participants are provided with one-on-one counseling, as well as addiction classes, group sessions. During the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is currently still ongoing, our program was temporarily closed for a duration of time. And during this time, we weren't able to operate as usual. So we weren't able to facilitate our groups as well as one-on-one counseling sessions and the addiction classes. So we're able to provide our participants with certain workbooks regarding addictions that they were able to work on and kind of hand back to us or call us whenever they had any questions. Since we were not able to have the one-on-one counseling sessions, our clients have always had a free phone on the floor. So they were given the options to call their counselors whenever they felt the need to talk or just talk about whenever they were in crisis or just have a session. One thing that stood out for us, or a participant who stood out for us during the peak of when the program was currently closed, was an individual who had just enrolled in the program, and he came to us from the justice system. Now, this individual had no funding, had no place to go, nor a family in Winnipeg. He's an immigrant from the Philippines, and he had just lost all of his landing papers as a result of his previous drug use before his involvement with the justice system. Although the program was closed, we were still able to work with this individual in terms of helping him deal with his addictions, working with him through his issues with the justice system, and still accommodate him in the program while we're still battling with the closure from the COVID-19 pandemic. Just recently, on Monday, actually, this individual or this participant completed the 90-day program at the Encourage Addictions program. And it was such a joy for all of us as staff members. And he was even much grateful because he came to this country 6 years ago and got involved with, of course, bad people dealing with homelessness for a long period of time. And being able to be so welcomed into a program that's helped him deal with his addictions. And we are still continuously working with him in order to figure out how to get his landing papers back and just navigate through the system. For him, he stated that being in Anchorage was kind of creating the hope, and just like we are called the center of hope, and it was such a joy to all of us again, and for him as an individual. One of the things that we did or we implemented that really stood out for me at least, and even staff members and our participants during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, was the fact that we're able to provide our participants with the option of residing in the program, or if they had a safe place to go, they were given the options to leave and come back when the program had restarted. So that was really good because some individuals had safe places to go, and due to some concerns they had, they were able to leave and come back when the program is started. But individuals who had no place to go were actually able to stay, still able to be provided with services. I mean, we weren't able to run as usual, but we were able to still cater for our clients, and that was really important during the time of the closure. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. I do have a question for you that I have here is, what was the interaction like while participants were waiting for the program to restart?
Individuals who were in jail or involved with the justice system, they had to go through a series of I guess they had to get tested for COVID, and they were still able to come into the program as long as we had no concerns of possible exposure. They were also advised that the program wasn't running as usual. We were running as a sober living facility, so they were still expected to maintain sobriety and follow the rules, but again, we couldn't have the classes. So they were advised of that, and they were given the option to come as long as we had no concerns of exposure.
Thank you very much. Doing great work there. Gord, I have a question here for you as well, and that is, what has the worry been like of the staff and clientele of the shelter about getting sick?
Well, at the beginning of the pandemic, when there was a lot of unknown factors and a lot of different information coming through media and social media, there was a lot of worry, especially among our housekeeping staff. But early on, I was able to get the right contacts at public health, people I could ask questions of and get answers right away. And we were able to set our staff members' concerns at ease quite early on by showing that we were doing the right things and clearing up some misunderstandings about how the disease might be spread. With the clientele, it's been a mixed bag. First, some weren't even aware there was a pandemic going on. But over time, the people who've been staying with us the longest have settled into, I think, a comfortable routine. They're following the protocols, the distancing in the dining room, which is now reopened, the distancing in our programs and our interviews, the interview screens, used to seeing people wearing masks. I think the people who've been here a while have settled into a routine, and then that helps any new people who move into the building get settled in quickly as well.
Thank you both for all the work you do at the shelter to support the vulnerable in downtown Winnipeg. We're now going to make our way out to Portage La Prairie and hear from Major Brenda Hammond, the Corps Officer of Portage La Prairie and the Food Bank.
Hello. So the Salvation Army in Portage, one of our big responsibilities is the food bank. And we are the main food bank for Portage. They have about 13,000 folk living in Portage. And poverty in Portage La Prairie is very high. It's 26.8%, and around 15 point something for Winnipeg, and 18 point something for Brandon. So once COVID hit, that really complicated things. Prior to COVID, the folk would come in and we served coffee and snack, and there was a cafe type fellowship that took place while they got their hamper. But once COVID hit, then they had to be outside. We put X's on the pavement and separated everybody. And that personal piece was gone. And before COVID, the folk could select what their family liked best. So we would set things up so that, you know, does your family like French fries, or does your family prefer, you know, different kinds of maybe chunky peanut butter versus regular peanut butter. But after COVID, everything had to be pre-packed. So we've lost that personal piece. So if mom is a baker, for instance, then we would have all the baking supplies there so she could select what she needs most. And now, especially now during COVID, where all their needs have changed so much, now is when they really need that specific kind of care. But we're just not able to do that because they're outside. The clients, what I try to do is stay outside in a safe space, because the clients are very, very anxious. Even maybe 8-10 weeks after the pandemic, they were still glazed over and very scared and clearly not getting good information, very fearful. And they're coming to food bank only because they absolutely have to come and they need food, but afraid that they're going to get sick. And then as COVID developed more, a section of those folk actually just started to act like there was no COVID. And that created all kinds of issues around keeping folks safe. We just finished food bank today for our regular clients, and I would say I probably talked about social distancing and asking them to go back and stand on the X's maybe 8 times because they just stand too close to one another, and, you know, very difficult to keep everybody safe when some folks are pretending like it's not an issue and that other folk are really afraid. I think we served 45 families today, just to give you a number. That's down from before COVID, because the Indigenous communities are actually being funded separately through the federal government. But alongside of that, we have a lot of families that have never ever been to a food bank before, and they are in need, they're struggling. And so we have some brand new people coming in with all kinds of needs. We, the rest of the week, we do kind of a one-on-one thing. But for our regular clients, we try to serve them on Wednesday mornings. I would like to report that the McCain Foundation gave us $60,000 to use to help us with COVID. And we have been using that money quite nicely. We're giving gift cards because the clients' needs have all changed. So what was a regular hamper isn't going to work now, especially if they're home or, you know, mom and dad are both laid off or whatever's happening, and the kids were home from school. So we were giving continuing to give $25 to a single and $50 to a medium, which is 2 to 4 people, and $75 to a large family, as well as extras. And there's lots and lots of extras that we're able to give. So they're getting their regular hamper, the extras they normally get, and then we're giving them a gift card. We are determined to support them because often the frontline people fall through the cracks, and especially during a crisis, then things just fall apart for them and nobody knows. So far we're doing okay, and we are anticipating continuing to support them. They get a hamper every 6 weeks, and then they can come once in between the 6 weeks for extras, which is all kinds of good stuff. Let's see, some of the issues. Well, we had a whole bunch of people who would pile into one car and come in, and each person represented a family. Well, now, of course, only one person can be in a vehicle. So there's all kinds of transportation issues around getting in and then getting home. A lot of folk call a cab. And today we had a great experience where we called a client a cab, and the cab that arrived is somebody who was new to Canada about a 1.5 years ago, and they came to Food Bank regularly. And now they've started this little business of they have their own vehicle used as a taxi. So the taxi that arrived was the client that no longer attends Food Bank because they're doing okay. And while she was here picking up the client from Food Bank, she actually asked us which day would be the best day to bring in vegetables from her garden for the Food Bank. And so, you know, it's a great thing when you see things come full circle, and it's very encouraging. So let's see, collective kitchens. We have this project that we've been working on called Collective Kitchens. We were just ready to start when COVID began, where we put 5 people in a kitchen, and they actually cook 5 meals and then take the food home to their families. So each person in the kitchen represents a family. So they're usually cooking for about 20 people. And we were just ready to start, and then COVID hit. So we are actually about to try again, to start again. We're hoping to have, you know, maybe 3 kitchens by the end of the year. And for a community this size, we could easily do 13 kitchens. So that would be folk who come to Food Bank that will transfer them into a program where they're going to learn better cooking skills and take food home to their families. It costs them a little bit, and it costs us, and they also we have a food cupboard. So they're gaining great skills, learning how to go through flyers. And we're very excited, you know, the old adage of giving them fish versus teaching them to fish. And I ran this program a long time ago, and it was very, very successful, and it just was wonderful. And we're really, really looking forward to moving forward, even though we're in COVID, but moving forward anyway, we're hoping to, we figured out we can put 3 people in a kitchen. So it'll be a modified version. We can have 3 people in the kitchen while keeping everybody 6 feet apart and still cooking. Questions?
Well, thank you for leading into that, Brenda. As a matter of fact, we do have a couple questions here for you today, and wondering what has been the biggest challenge to operating the food bank during this time?
I think the specific, when their needs are the highest, then they're actually outside the building. So private one-on-one conversations are very, very difficult. We just have to figure out a different way. So things they shared with us prior to COVID, you know, prayer concerns. We always had a prayer box, and we would get maybe 6 or 8 prayers every week in the prayer box. And so that personal touch is not there. And sometimes now I find an issue has been a big issue for a long time, and I'm only just discovering it. And so that's the biggest issue, is some folks don't speak up, of course, especially new people to the system. And that makes it hard. They're suffering. Some people, especially single people, are very, very having a very rough time.
So another question for you here, thank you for answering that one, is what are some of the successes of the food bank during this pandemic?
Our volunteers are an amazing. Of course, anybody with any health concerns couldn't come. And but just we have a core group of 7 volunteers that they're just come every single Wednesday, and we've worked together as a team. We wouldn't actually have new people come in right now. We have to figure out how to work 6 feet apart and be a team. And yet at the same time, most of our volunteers are in their 70s, so they are in the high risk group. But we've figured out, so the volunteers, they know the clients, and they know which ones are vegetarians and which ones has a milk allergy, and just to really serve the clients best. I would say that would be our biggest success story, along with all the little things that it's a great reward when you're so needed, we're so needed, and yet at the same time, easy to overlook the folk at the food bank.
Great. Thank you so much, Major, for all your help in Portage, meeting the increased demands and challenges on that food bank. You're doing great work out there, you and your team. We're now going to turn things over to the Emergency Disaster Services, and that would be Debbie Clark, who's going to talk to us now.
Good morning. My name is Debbie Clark, and I am the Emergency Disaster Services Director for Manitoba and Northwest Ontario. I've been employed with the Salvation Army for over 20 years, and for the past 8.5 years, I've had the privilege of being in the Emergency Disaster Services Department. I want to start off today by saying thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, and also thank you for your support. Your partnership has allowed us to be able to do the things that we've been called to do, and I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. So the Salvation Army and Emergency Disaster Services provide things like meet and greet at reception centers, emergency clothing, emergency food, and probably one of the things that we're most visible and most well known for is our mobile canteens. So a mobile canteen could get called out to things like a house fire, apartment fires. There may be evacuations that we would serve people from an evacuation. We've been called out to ground searches. I remember a few years ago, we were called out to a river search, a very cold time of year, the middle of winter, and we were asked to bring our vehicle to a search that was going on for a little boy who had fallen through the ice. And although we were called to supply hot coffee, a hot meal, a nice bowl of soup, I realized very quickly as I was there that it was more than that. We were there, we were a safe place. We were there to offer the kind word, we were there to listen, we were just present. And I realized then that the Salvation Army had a privilege that we don't take lightly, to be able to respond in that area. We've also responded with our community vehicles at floods, at forest fires, at tornadoes, and even on a hot day, I've had the privilege of going to our downtown area where the most vulnerable people are and handing out cold water on very hot, humid days. So all of these things we did prior to COVID. So what's changed, we ask? Well, we realized very quickly that tornadoes, fires, floods, all of these still take place even though there is a pandemic happening. And so what do we need to do? How do we need to still be there for the people? How do we need to provide our service? Well, we realize that our volunteers need to be safe. We need to first and foremost look after our volunteers. And then we have volunteers who, because of an emergency, come and they want to help us, but they're not trained and they don't have the training that is required in order to volunteer. Clients need to be safe. Those who are coming to us for help need to be safe. So it meant we had to change the way we served. If you've ever been in a canteen, it's a very tight quarters, very tight. And so we've had to say, how can we work around this? We still need to provide the service. How are we going to do it? So we've tried as best we can to get people from the same household that would be able to be in the canteen together or from the same bubble. And that's worked pretty well for us. We've worn masks in the canteen. Not only is it a hot canteen to be working out of, but now you're wearing a mask at the same time. And so that's been a little bit of a hurdle that we've had to get over. We've had to switch from self-serve. Often we've put our condiments, our cream, sugar, cutlery, all of that on the outside of the vehicle where people can pick up what they want. They want ketchup, mustard, however that looks. And now we've had to change that to from a self-serve to a handout. So we hand the person the food already prepared as they want it, which changed how many people we need, how we need to place our volunteers. And so we've had to look at doing training. We can't do in-person training because of COVID. And so we've started across the territory doing training online. And although it's not ideal, it was very necessary. So the last few months, I've been online doing a lot of training. The difference with this now is a 4-hour course. I could teach a course on my own, but now we require 4 instructors so that we can do breakouts. And because of virtual technology, we've had to change. So it requires more people, but we've been able to make that happen. Standing outside a canteen, people can't just come up to the canteen now and stand in line and get what they need. We have to make sure that social distancing takes place. We need to make sure that we are watching that. We don't want anyone to get sick. And so we've had to put things in place for that. Sourcing personal protective equipment. At the very beginning, that was a hard thing to do because the demand was high, the cost was high. And as the Salvation Army, we wanted to make sure that we weren't buying the equipment for the sake of having it, because we didn't want to take from those who really needed it. So we had to figure out what do we need for the service we're providing and how does that look? And so we've had to work through all of that. I think one of the things that's really been hard is picturing you're going to a house fire and you're walking up to the person who has just lost everything and you're wearing a mask. Safe touch is gone. How can you look at them and they see the care in your face when your face is half covered? And so that's been really difficult for us. Earlier, Major Gord Taylor from the Center of Hope talked about the need with the bed shortage. And I received a call and asked if the Salvation Army Emergency Disaster Services would open up a shelter or a drop-in center, an overnight drop-in center. And so we worked in all the social distancing, we worked out all the kinks, and we opened up a center in one of our local downtown units. And so people could come, they would be there and they would go through security, they would get all the testing questions asked and all of that. And then they had a place where they could go, they had a table, they had a chair, and they had a mat on the floor. And they had the opportunity to stay the night, stay for a few hours, or whatever they chose. Of course, those who know me I will know that I had to make sure there was a coffee, there was a nice grilled cheese sandwich or a fresh tea biscuit ready for them. And then they were given breakfast in the morning for those who stayed. That was an opportunity that I didn't take for granted, an opportunity to reach out to our most vulnerable population. And so we had people coming there every night. Once that closed, then the Salvation Army opened the day center. And the unit asked if I would look after the food and the snacks and beverages for that. And so I've had the opportunity of going there twice a week, 3 times a week, however I need, to make sure that they have the supplies they need. There was a man who used to come to the center. His name was Lawrence. And I met Lawrence at the overnight center. And I got to know him. He was always there every night when I went. He was sitting outside waiting for us to open the doors. And just not long after we opened the day center, I walked in and I saw Lawrence. And I walked over, and as close as I was allowed to get, I said, "Hey, Lawrence, how are you?" And he looked at me and the smile on his face. He said, "I miss seeing you around. How you doing?" And so we had a great conversation, Lawrence and I. And he was sharing with me that things on Winnipeg streets, as you heard Major Gore talk about, are getting tough. And it's not a safe place anymore. And so Lawrence said to me, he said, "You know, I think I'm going to go home. I'm going to go back to my home where it's safe." But he said, "I want to tell you that I really appreciate how the Salvation Army has gone over and above for us." And the look in his face, I realized that day that yes, we're providing a service in a very different way, but we made a difference. Even if it's just to that one person, just to Lawrence, we made a difference. And I realized that it's only because of your help. I want to say thank you, because we were able to do that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Deb. A couple questions for you here. What sort of foods and activities are happening at the drop-in center?
So at the drop-in center, people can come in, they can have coffee or a tea, they can have a bottle of water. We give them a piece of fruit. Vegetables are not something that they often get. So I have prepackaged fruit, vegetables. They get a carb. So it's either homemade tea biscuit, homemade muffins, or a bun with peanut butter or jam that they can put on it. And then they get a dessert, granola bar, cookies, crackers, whatever they choose. So we have the list. They can come in. We let them choose whatever they want. They can have one of everything if they choose. And they get what they need in their bodies, the substance they need for that day. In the afternoon, because people were staying around, they've decided to show a movie at 1:30 in the afternoon. And so we've even been finding that people are coming in the morning, grabbing a coffee and a muffin, piece of fruit, and then coming back in the afternoon and coming in out of the heat right now and watching a movie. It's just a beautiful place to be.
That's wonderful, thank you. And how is the drop-in center received by those without homes?
I think the people really appreciate the fact that there is a place to go. I was reminded in our emergency disaster services group, we talk, and there's no place for them to go to a washroom. There's no place for them to go to get out of the heat. services are closed, restaurants don't have washrooms available, public libraries that they've often gone to, they're closed. And so if a person has to go to a washroom, there's no dignity in having to go to a washroom outside. And I think they've appreciated the fact that we're there, that we care, that we have a smile on our faces, and we try our best to give them something special. One thing that happened the other day, I was there doing some muffins and I decided to make some fresh cheese on a bun melted. And I walked out with the biscuits and the cheese melted on it. And one guy looked at me and he had this smile on his face and his eyes just got really big. And he said to me, "Can I have one of those?" And I said, "Tell you what, you can have two." And he was so excited. And I think they realize that we do care.
Thank you, Debbie. We certainly appreciate you always being ready to respond to a variety of needs out there. We're now going to make our way over to Fort Frances and hear from Auxiliary Captain Arthur Heathcote, Corps Officer and Pastor for Fort Frances. Over to you, Arthur.
Good morning. Welcome to Northwestern Ontario. My name is Arthur and I am the Corps Officer here in Fort Frances. I've held the rank of Auxiliary Captain for just over a year now. And prior to coming to Fort Frances, I was at Divisional Headquarters in Winnipeg for just over 5 years. I was also a soldier or a member of the Winnipeg Weedema Corps. So the Salvation Army Community Ministries here in Fort Frances consists of three specific elements. First and foremost, we are a church. We have Sunday morning worship and a Wednesday evening Bible study. Second, the community thrift store provides a safe and ethical way for people to recycle household goods and clothing, and revenue generated from the sale of that is used to fund our various programs here in Fort Frances, like our community services, family services, our food bank, summer camp opportunities for children, our Christmas hamper program, as well as toys, as well as emergency supports as well. And thirdly, we provide services to support individuals who are vulnerable, facing challenges or crisis through the Family Services Department. Again, food bank is managed through there. We provide emergency fuel, food, clothing, and temporary shelter, as well as the seasonal supports are all handled through that as well, the Christmas hampers and toys. Community Family Services conducts client interviews to assess clients' needs and how they can best help them meet their needs. Well, since COVID happened, our church programming was closed down, which created a bit of a dilemma for some of our people. A lot of our congregation were not really Zoom friendly, so to say. So we were able to institute MP3 format, where it was just an audio presentation for them. So I was able to put together the Sunday sermon in an MP3 format and deliver that through email to those who had subscribed for that service. And that worked so well that we also did our Bible study through that format as well. So again, MP3 format for the Bible study, and it was really enjoyed by the congregation. Our thrift store closed down at the end of March, meaning that our ability to generate revenue abruptly stopped. And we also had to lay off 3 longtime employees as well. Throughout this time, we've continued to accept donations through our back door, which have been quarantined once they were received. And once the store reopens, and at that point in time, we have plenty of stock that we'll be able to start generating funding again. The Community Services, Family Services Office, though, has remained open throughout this time. Initially, everything closed down in Fort, but we resolved to continue to be available and to the people who needed help at this time. So Initially, our food bank had just been open for 4 hours a week. We instantly went to Monday through Friday, 30 hours a week for food bank. What we did though, in order to eliminate the pileups, so to say, is we instituted an appointment system. So people had to call in, make an appointment for the food bank or for the community family services. And that way we were able to look after that social distancing issue that was so very important at the time. Fortunately, we had some emergency grants and a lot of community generosity poured in through our doors, which enabled us to provide perishable goods for our hampers. Prior to, we only did non-perishables, but now we were able to supplement hampers with things like hamburger, chicken, milk, eggs, bread, fresh fruit as well. So since April, we've dispensed about 6,500 pounds of food through our doors, which and that went to about 308 households in town. Over 58% of those households were brand new clients, people that we had never seen before. Also in the community, we decided to deliver lunches to essential workers here. Since that time, we've had about 280 lunches delivered. We'd pick a certain agency each week and drop in at lunch and provide them as a surprise over lunch hour, just as just to encourage them and let them know that they're thought of during this time as well. We have a nursing home here in Fort Frances that has about 130 residents that had been in lockdown since the end of January. It opened 2 days before the pandemic and then got shut down again. So we really wanted to reach out to those individuals who were starving for company and missing family, that type of deal. So the first month, we did up an encouragement card for each of those residents with a package of tea in it. And we'd also received a large donation of pot of gold chocolates. So we were able to deliver 180 boxes of chocolates to all of the staff at the nursing home as well, just to let them know that, that they're remembered and supported throughout this time. The following month, we sent a small package size Kleenex to each of the residents as well, with a little encouragement note inside of it. And then the third month, we sent in another encouragement card just to let people know that they were being prayed for, that they were remembered. We also have hospitals throughout this area, and at the hospital here, we delivered gift packs to all of the staff members. The gift packs consisted of a package of Kleenex, a small instant drink, a granola bar, and a small pocket-sized magnifier. And that was delivered to each member, staff member at the hospital, about 250 there. And we received some feedback from the administrator there that they really appreciated the fact that we remembered all of the staff. Many of the gifts that had come in for the first few months were designated to just nurses and doctors. So it was a real blessing to be able to let a housekeeping individual know that they were being remembered and their contribution was really important to what they were doing in this town. Our catchment area consists of the entire Rainy River District, which goes from Emo to Rainy River to Atikokan as well. It's a fairly large area, so we reached out to all of those hospitals as well, delivered a gift to each staff member in those 3 facilities, as well as they have long-term care residents, so we made sure that they received some encouragement as well. So a few weeks into the pandemic, our food hamper numbers started to drop. And we were getting really concerned about the seniors and children and those on fixed incomes here in Fort Frances. So we decided to launch a children's lunch kit day. And we did that from our front door. It was open to anyone with children to just come and grab a lunch kit that was filled with all kinds of food goodies and some toys as well, just to bring some encouragement to children. The first time we did it, we saw 44 of those kits picked up, and it was so well received that we did it another month, and this time we had the Kiwanis Club of Fort Frances decided to sponsor it, and 42 of those kits were picked up. We also reached out to Meals on Wheels here in Fort Frances. They had experienced a budget cut that was hurting them, but what we were able to do is we were able to supply them with a bag of fresh fruit that would last a full week for each client. So that's been delivered each week for the last number of weeks. I think since the middle of May, we started that program, and it has been really well received. We've received some thank you cards from those individuals just saying, thank you for the fruit. You know, it's been meaningful to them. We also reached out to the Rainy River District Services Administration Board, who manage all the rent subsidized departments here in town, so that we could tap into those seniors and the other fixed incomers. So we put a poster up in the building that basically said, Salvation Army will be in your neighborhood next week. If you'd like a food hamper, please give us a call and let us know. Well, the first attempt at it, we had posters up in a block that had about 30 apartments in it, and we only received 2 phone calls. So, so we decided to drop off some extras at that as well. And then we found out a few days later that those extras disappeared as well. So to date, we've done 7 apartment blocks in Rainy River, Fort Frances, and Emo too. So it's been really well received. What was interesting was just being able to be proactive, and we were able to reach out to a lot more people that way.
Oh, thank you, Arthur. That's great work you guys got going on out there. I do have a couple questions for you as well. One being, has there been an impact that you have witnessed?
Well, yes, the impact that we witnessed was the fact that there were some people that were hesitant to identify themselves to us. So it was a question of, you know, were they thinking that they were taking away from someone else, so depriving themselves of food that they needed. So just by dropping off those extra packs at the apartment blocks definitely showed that people did really appreciate being able to pick up that stuff. So, but it was important that we were proactive in doing that. We couldn't expect people to come to us, and so it was good to know that the extras that were dropped off were used. And throughout this time, it's really given the Salvation Army an opportunity to raise their visibility dramatically within Fort Frances, not only with the individuals, but with new corporate partnerships that we've realized as well that are going to be beneficial in the long run.
Nice. And final question for you is, what makes it all worthwhile?
You know, we had an individual that called us one morning and said, I wonder if I can come in for your food bank. And we said, of course, and we arranged a specific time for him to come in. He was a father with 3 children. And he came in, and when he saw the amount of food that was laid out for him, he was overwhelmed. He just, is this all for me? And tears started to roll down his face. He had never had to use a food bank before, And he was just blown away by the amount of stuff that we were able to provide for that family at the time. So, I mean, we fight for the dignity of all people, you know, and it's stories like that that motivate me to continue to do what we do.
Thank you so much for sharing all that with us. Well, we're coming up to noon, and I don't want to stand between anyone and their lunch, so we will thank our speakers again for taking time out of the day to share with us the view from the Salvation Army Ministry units, and thank them for the work that they do again. They are Executive Director Major Gordon Taylor and Addiction Counselor Anna Opa from the Winnipeg Center of Hope Shelter, Major Brenda Hammond, Corps Officer, Pastor, Porter's La Prairie Food Bank, Debbie Clark, the Area Emergency Disaster Service Director out of Prairie East, and Auxiliary Captain Arthur Heathcote, Corps Officer and Pastor for Fort Francis. I want to take this opportunity to thank you, our valued donors. All the work you heard today is only possible because of your generosity. Without you, we'd not be able to fill the gaps and provide for our most vulnerable. So on behalf of myself, our team, and those we serve, thank you for helping us give hope today and every day in communities across our provinces. We welcome any feedback or questions that we did not have a time to answer today or get back to. Please reach out to your contact. There will be a short thank you video from Lieutenant Colonel John P. Murray to follow, and then the call will end. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and be safe out there. Thanks for joining us.
When COVID-19 brought the world to a standstill, it also put the future of hundreds of thousands of Canadians in jeopardy. More than ever, our communities needed us, and we needed you. Thanks to you, and because of your generosity and kindness, hungry school-aged children received food. Struggling families knew where they could find their next meal, and lonely seniors were able to digitally connect with their loved ones. People experiencing homelessness found a safe place to sleep, and our food banks were stocked to meet the increased demand for assistance. Our work is not over. Indeed, it is only just beginning as the recovery effort continues. We're grateful for your support and invite you to visit salvationarmy.ca for up-to-date information on the Salvation Army's COVID-19 response. On behalf of the Salvation Army and those we've served during the COVID-19 pandemic, thank you. Together, we're giving hope today.